Has the unthinkable finally entered the realm of possibility? For decades, the very notion of Sidney Crosby in anything but a Pittsburgh Penguins jersey felt like heresy, a betrayal of the Steel City's hockey soul. But recent comments from Sid the Kid himself, coupled with a hypothetical trade debate on TSN's Overdrive, have ignited a firestorm of speculation that, while not imminent, forces us to confront a potential future that no Penguins fan ever wanted to imagine. The conversation began innocently enough, rooted in Crosby's childhood affinity for the Montreal Canadiens and a candid admission to Pierre Lebrun of The Athletic. When asked about the speculation linking him to the Habs, Crosby, ever the professional, acknowledged, "It doesn't make it any easier to hear those things when you're losing, but at the same time, to know that a team like that wants you, it's not the end of the world. Could be worse." He even offered a wry smile. Let's be unequivocally clear, there has been no imminent trade speculation linking Crosby to the Canadiens. This is not a done deal, or even a likely one right now. However, if the day ever comes when Crosby decides it's time to move on from Pittsburgh, it appears Montreal would be at the very top of his list. And that, my friends, changes everything. The debate on TSN's Overdrive, sparked by Brian Hayes, centered on a hypothetical blockbuster: Sidney Crosby for 19-year-old phenom Ivan Demidov. Jeff O'Neill, without hesitation, declared he'd make the trade, arguing that even 2 years of Crosby playing at an elite level would justify the deal for the Canadiens. But he stood alone in that assessment. Jamie McLennan, while rightly praising Crosby as a Mount Rushmore player, questioned the fundamental premise for Montreal. Are the Canadiens truly close enough to contention for a short-term Crosby acquisition to make sense? McLennan argued that Demidov, despite being an unknown quantity at the NHL level, possesses too much potential to be sacrificed for an aging Crosby, who is nearing the twilight of his illustrious career. If Montreal were further along in their competitive window, perhaps the calculus would change.
As it stands, Demidov is simply too high a price.
This sentiment likely extends to other untouchable prospects like Lane Hutson, whom O'Neill suggested the Penguins might ask for. The fan reaction on social media was swift and overwhelmingly negative. Many argued that Demidov, a projected future superstar, is absolutely untouchable. One fan emphatically stated, "Do not trade Demidov under any circumstances." Another pointed out that General Manager Kent Hughes simply doesn't operate by sacrificing young prospects, regardless of how much they might want to acquire a player of Crosby's stature. This widespread rejection of the Demidov for Crosby swap highlights the immense value placed on future stars, even for a team like Montreal, which is hungry for a return to glory. So, if Demidov and other top prospects like Hudson, Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, or Juraj Slavkovsky are off the table for Montreal, what would a successful Crosby trade even look like? This is where the situation becomes incredibly complex for the Pittsburgh Penguins. It's crucial to remember that Crosby holds all the cards here. With his no-movement clause and his legendary status, if he ever reaches a point where he tells Kyle Dubas he's ready to move on, he will dictate his destination. This puts the Penguins in a difficult position, forced to get the best possible return under constrained circumstances. While Crosby is undoubtedly a superstar, the return for him would likely be below what one might typically expect for a player of his caliber. Given his age and contract situation, Dubas's job, should this unthinkable scenario unfold, would be to extract whatever he can, focusing on pieces that can genuinely contribute to the Penguins' future. With Crosby out of the lineup, the immediate need for an NHL-ready player in return diminishes. Instead, draft picks and prospects would become paramount for a Penguins team that would be in full-blown rebuild mode. The Canadiens, conversely, would likely be unwilling to part with anything that could hinder their competitive window in the next 2 to 3 seasons. If they acquire Crosby, it's because they believe he puts them over the top, making a deep playoff run possible. Therefore, trading away cornerstone young players or high-impact talent would be counterproductive to their goals. So, Why would the Penguins even consider such a trade if the return appears to be so weak in terms of immediate impact players? First, the Canadiens do have a deep system and there are good prospects within it that the Penguins could certainly utilize. Second, and perhaps more importantly, the draft picks Montreal would relinquish could be incredibly valuable for Pittsburgh in the long term. The Canadiens possess all their first-round picks for the next 3 seasons, 4 second-round picks in the next 3 years, 3 third-rounders, and 4 fourth-rounders. Expect multiple picks to be part of any deal, providing Dubas with the ammunition to accelerate the rebuild through the draft. Financially, the Canadiens would also likely need to send salary to Pittsburgh to make the numbers work. Montreal is projected to have around $20 million in cap space to spend on a deadline acquisition. Crosby has one more season at an $8.7 million cap hit on his current contract. The Penguins in this scenario would likely not retain salary unless it was part of a truly massive deal that brought back an overwhelming return. Ultimately, the thought of trading Sidney Crosby is a gut-wrenching one for any Penguins fan. It's a move that would signal the definitive end of an era, a painful but potentially necessary step towards a future without the greatest player in franchise history. While it's not ideal, and certainly not a necessity right now, the fact that this conversation is even happening underscores the critical juncture the Pittsburgh Penguins find themselves in. The team is at a crossroads, and the decisions made in the coming months, whether about ownership, other veteran players, or even the unthinkable with Crosby, will shape the Penguins' destiny for years to come. What are your raw,
Honest thoughts on this, Penguins fans?
Is there any scenario where you could stomach a Sidney Crosby trade? And if so, what kind of return would make it worthwhile? Let us know your feelings in the comments below. If this discussion has stirred something in you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analysis and all the latest news on your Pittsburgh Penguins. We want to hear from every single one of you, so join the conversation.